Welcome back to Apatros Review. In this episode, Exit Wounds, directed by Andrzej Bartkowiak in the year 2001, Steven Seagal film. Hi there, welcome back to Apatros Review. I'm your host, Mila Sipka, and join me to take in a ride through the wild world of science fiction action horror, all from my personal DVD collection. I have plenty of DVDs, plus a few Blu-rays, videotapes, video games, and TV shows, even a few books. Now in this episode we look at the film Exit Wounds, which is a Steven Seagal film that came out in 2001. It's got something of a reputation for being one of Seagal's last good films, and this was right after he made, around the point he started his direct-to-video career. Now, this film was a co-production between the USA and Canada, and premiered in the US on the 16th of March 2001, and in Australia on the 19th of April of that year. Now, the DVD that I'm reviewing is from Roadshow Entertainment, as you can see there. This is actually just a re-release. Roadshow Entertainment released it originally, and it's rated MA, and it's got quite a supplement on it. I'll explain more later. Now, after a successful attempt to save the life of the US Vice President during an aborted assassination attempt by militia, which surprisingly goes down with his superiors like somebody letting off a fart in a packed church of his superiors, causing him to be relegated to the worst precinct in the town, lone wolf super cop Orion Boyd, played by Steven Seagal, finds out that nothing is as it seems as he accidentally stumbles onto an operation by the precinct's corrupt cops to distribute the heroin that they originally confiscated during drug raids, by mixing them into t-shirts and then selling them over the internet with the help of a local dealer named Latrell Walker. As the dirty cops, led by Louis Strutt, played by Michael J. White, try their best to stop him, Boyd also discovers that he's not the only one bent on taking the crooks down. Latrell Walker is actually hiding a rather noble secret that causes him and Boyd to become allies in a combined mission, but the stakes are getting to a dangerous level. Now, in the late 1980s and early 1990s, Steven Seagal became a modest action star to rival many of the familiar faces in the genre. For example, Arnie, Stallone, Norris, Lundgren, Bronson, and Van Damme, getting a certain cult following for his soft-spoken but hard-hitting moves, noble personality, and tendency to break people's bones, and twist their limbs into pretzel shapes and cause all sorts of hilariously nasty action mayhem. But once the late 1990s came, Seagal's career tumbled over with a short string of somewhat misguided flops that started his decline to the direct-to-video market. The 2000s hit, and Seagal's career hit the skids with the impact of one of his trademark Aikido arm breaks. Exit Wounds was the last of Seagal's films, until Machete in the late 2000s, to get a wide theatrical release, and for a good long time considered by fans to be possibly his best post-millennial movie. Having seen nearly all the films Seagal made in the decade of the 2000s, I would have to disagree, sorry to say, but I have to disagree. The film is well staged and shot, with the action scenes given the necessary room to be brutal, often not as brutal as the pre-millennial stuff, aside from a handful of gnarly kills, and the production certainly looks very slick. If it was for the action scenes alone, I would have given this a B. But what practically hobbles this film is that the ridiculous mishmash of a script that appears to be strung together from old cop show cliches, and an attempt by the writers to be clever, only to wind up being utterly stupid in the final product. The action set pieces that starts with the film are good, but the terrorists conduct their prepping in plain sight with those who are observant, clinging on to the fact something is wrong. I'll excuse the insane sight of a helicopter with a smiley face painted on it being blown to pieces by Seagal's somewhat magical handgun, which changes from a .45 caliber to a Glock 18 and having inconsistent sound effects. Plus, you cannot kill a helicopter with only a handgun, unless you aim for either the fuel tank, assuming you know where to locate it, or the tail rotor. Partly because it was hilarious to see Seagal repeat this trick in even more unconvincing fashion in Shadow Man a few years later, and something we just don't get in movies anymore given the current interest in adhering to logic. Now, the result, where Seagal gets demoted for saving the Vice President's life, is the first of the unforgivable stuff, which shows how brainless this film actually is. The Serpico-esque plot about an honest but unconventional cop trying to single-handedly dismantle a cop-run drug ring is not exactly what I would call stupid, but the way it is set up it certainly reeks of idiocy. The drug ring seems to involve half the precinct, but the commander has no knowledge of it, despite she actually served in internal affairs. And even many of the honest officers don't suspect a thing going on, even though the cops involved seem to be pretty obvious in the way they conduct their business. The fact that the writers would even have the balls to kill off the commander after a silly-looking car chase was a bad idea, not least the sheer abruptness of the move, and having the dealer that the cops are conducting the operation with happens to be, get this, an honest computer programmer who is literally filthy rich by cashing out of his dot-com company right before the collapse of the dot-com industry, around the turn of the millennium. and using the funds to run an undercover operation that specializes in exposing police corruption, with a small army of private investigators whose younger brother is currently being falsely imprisoned by the dirty cops. The whole thing seems a tad ridiculous, especially when you learn that the guy's website was 999.com. Everything you want for under $10. Seriously? What in the freaking heck? Anyway, the acting is pretty much a mixed bag here. The best actors here are Jill Hennessy as the commander, Isa Washington as Seagal's honest partner, and while the rest of the cast range from the annoying, Tom Arnold seems to have had a career in the 1990s playing comedy roles, but his brand of bugged out humor is only effective in making people wanting to punch the wanker in his face. But he does okay pretty much here compared to the others. Michael J. White, who you might remember from Universal Soldier The Return, is reasonable, but his arch-villain's role isn't substantial enough to work, thanks to shoddy writing, although to be fair, the moment's rundown you get of his character, that he's well connected enough to score you freebies to basketball games and extra work on security gigs, and he's so tough that he doesn't wear his pistol sometimes, and even saving a young girl from a rabid Doberman by killing the dog with his bare hands, does give the viewer something tangible to understand about the character. While DMX, real name Earl Simmons, an uber-successful but otherwise untalented rapper, whose role here is slightly similar to his real-life persona. By the way, I'm not a fan of rap, in the sense that they're both extremely successful but nothing else, does have an undeniably strong screen presence, but the persona stumbles over every time he has to deliver more than a single line's worth of dialogue. But by far the worst performer in the cast is none other than Anthony Anderson, an utterly atrocious loser of a comedian who has just recently made an ass of himself by his appearance on the 2020 Emmy Awards, where he forced the host to support the socialist BLM movement and kept chanting the movement's name for a couple of minutes. It is one thing to disagree with somebody else's political or religious beliefs. It is another to tell that person that your beliefs are better than theirs. But it's quite a nasty thing to force the other person to support a belief or political ideology that they do not support. What Anthony Anderson did was just plain dreadful to see and also highly embarrassing for him. Not to mention the sheer hypocrisy of the movement's aims. Now, to go into politics here, the BLM's founders and organizers are, by their own words, trained Marxists, and their goals are not about fighting racism or bigotry, but about causing a socialist takeover of society for their own sinister purposes. No normal person should support this evil movement that takes advantage of the deaths of innocent people for their own twisted beliefs. If somebody comes up to me and tries to force me to salute the BLM, I'll break their fingers. The worst part of the film is the utterly disgusting outro scene over the end credits, where Anderson and Tom Arnold spend the running time of the closing credits discussing some very gross topics, of which I will spare you the details. Those guys need their heads to be seriously checked. Anyway, the film is pretty much a C, a 4 out of 10. The action scenes are pretty good, but otherwise, if it wasn't for the action scenes alone, it would probably get a B. But the stupid story and really bad humor drags it down to the average level. Now for the gore. Some of the kills here do have a certain gnarliness to them that will appeal to Seagal's fans, but will not trouble the moralists too much. Gorehounds should regard this as elevator music. Now for nudity, there's at least 5 pairs of breasts seen in the film, 2 of which are covered in green body paint, and one of those are pressed up against a window. That's about it on the nudity front. Now for the DVD. This came onto the Region 4 market as one of Roadshow Entertainment's titles. The picture and sound quality are decent, but as what you would expect a 2001 film to be, Waffle Roadshow had a pretty nasty image of DVD collectors in the beginning of the DVD era, with some very mediocre quality DVDs, something this particular DVD is immune to, and the subtitles are fairly much on the accurate level. On the supplemental side of things, the disc is packed with a BTS, behind the scenes, an annoying featurette showing Anthony Anderson spending a day on the set, a music video of DMX for the film's main track, and the theatrical trailer to round off the package. And, like I said, Exit Wounds gets a C. It's not a bad film, just average at best. Like I said, the action scenes are pretty good, but just the story just drags it down. Now, that's it for that review. Now, by the way, for Halloween, I'm going to do a little special called Coronaween. As if you checked my previous video's comment, Coronaween, which is a 4-part special where I basically do 4 horror films to coincide with the Halloween of 2020. It's going to be interesting. It's just going to involve a lot of work. Maybe the choice of films I use, you'll be surprised by it. Now, if you, I don't do requests, but if you want to know if I have a particular film in my collection, just hit me up in the comments. Hope you guys are staying safe. Finally, Victoria's out of lockdown. Finally. Next thing we'll see is Danny Andrews getting kicked out, hopefully. And stay safe. And that's it for this review.